Listen here, man. I had to bring the headline
What's
in.
in that?
This right here, this is a nice little glass of ice cold water.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people.
I just bet.
Get fried. What's happening, y'all? Listen, man. Y'all having a good time so far? Y'all can do better than that. You having a good time so far? All right. Now, that's Titans family right there. So with that being said, when you go and you have to go and retool, you got to go find somebody that means something a little different, where it means something in your gut. You know, somebody that grinded from the bottom to get where they are. Executive Vice President? Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, General Manager? And I'm telling y'all right now, he brought his family with him, too, so you need to be nice. You hear me? I'm just telling you what it is now. Florida boy. Now, I was about to make him have to sing Rocket Top to get up here on stage. I said, you know what? He did a good job in the draft, so we'll give him a pass. Y'all put y'all hands together and give a big Titans welcome to the install, Rand Carthon.
No Rocky Top this time. Not at all. That's for you, man. You're on this side.
How we doing?
Uh-oh.
Trying to kill me.
Don't get. I can't have you end up on IR before the season starts. Can't do it.
Thank
How
you
feeling?
guys for having me. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Listen, man, this has got to be such an exciting time for you and your staff and for your fan base. I mean, look, this is just for a podcast, right?
Yeah, this is dope.
Come on.
See everybody back there. How we doing? Excuse my back. I'm sorry if I got my back to you. Excuse my back. I apologize.
So for you guys at this point, I mean, there's been so many different changes in this organization year over year. As you've worked through it, obviously you've had to deal with us on a regular basis, peppering you with questions.
And that's hard. Oh, I got to deal with you every week.
I mean, you know, I'm like a Christmas and Easter reporter at this point. I show up from time to time. But for you guys, just the level of excitement about seeing your vision come to fruition throughout the course of the free agent process, the coaching staff hire, everything that you guys have done up until this point.
No, it's been a whirlwind. I was just out back talking. It's been a hell of a 15 months, you know, for your first time. You know,
she said we know.
You know, on the job. But that's a part of it. You know, it's going to always be ebbs and flows, and no matter what you do, and we embrace it. But, you know, I think when people talk about the off seasons, right, they only look at it from a player acquisition standpoint. And I think one of the biggest moves we made this offseason, and it's getting understated, is the fact that we hired Brian Callahan, and the amazing staff that he put together. Which I can't wait for you guys to. You guys have met the coordinators, but when you get to meet the personality of the assistant coaches, I promise you it all makes sense. But yeah, from that, and then just the connectiveness of the staff, of our scouting staff, of our coaching staff, and how much time we spend together, and how much time we've put into what is it going to take to be a Titan in all phases. It's a relationship that's been forged, and you know, for the people that have been in the building a very long time, and then even for newcomers, you can't tell that this staff is new and that we're all still just getting to know each other.
You know, Rand, it's interesting you say that because I don't think people realize how important the coaching staff is. They know the head coach, they know the coordinators. Very few people know the assistants. And if you could talk a little bit about how important they are on a day-to-day basis, and you can mention any names you want if you choose to, but I don't think people realize the importance of those guys in terms of actually doing the real serious coaching work.
Oh yeah, they're the guys. So you look at the coordinators are more like architects, right? They tell you what they want it to look like. And then you got the guys that, you know, actually in there with the hammer and the nails is making it happen, and that's the assistant coaches. You got guys that I've worked with, you know, for years and have a ton of respect for. And, you know, we mentioned Denard Wilson, our D coordinator, earlier. We worked together at the Rams. Frank Bush, who I think has been in every phase of the Oilers-Titans organization. Yep. He's phenomenal, you know, as a coach. And then you swing over on the offensive side, obviously Bill Callahan, who we affectionately call Big Coach, you know. So
it might be the most popular person in the building right now.
we didn't want to do the Big Cali, Little Cali thing, so we just call him Big Coach. But then you have other coaches with the pedigree, Titan D.A.W.G, who's known as a developer of wide receivers. Oddly enough, Titan was one of my assistant coaches in college. So our relationship goes back, 22 years. And then you look at guys that we've been able to keep, the Chris Harrises, the Justin Altons, the Anthony Levines. These are guys that are hell of coaches that we've been able to retain to kind of be the glue guys to bring this whole thing together.
Tyke was in Arizona with Larry Fitz, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I remember meeting him at the Combine a number of years ago, and I think he was with Arizona at the time.
Yeah, so he had, during his time in Arizona, he had Anquan Bolden as a rookie, and then Fitz came, right after that, and then he was a part of that amazing run in Denver, where they had Wes Welker, Demarius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, that whole run, where they set tons of offensive records. So he knows what it looks like and what it should look like, and hopefully he'll bring some of that here.
You've talked about the targeted approach to not just the draft, but the offseason and what you guys are trying to build, and in particular around Will heading into year 2. How much did you see him grow just from those 9 starts that he was forced into action on, to the point where you're starting to see, okay, this is something that we can continue to mold, continue to take to the next level, and we're going to try and supplement it in as best a way as possible?
No, that was big. His growth, obviously the circumstances in which he was, put into the lineup, you never want to see happen. And that's kind of you prefer to have your young quarterback sit behind a veteran, learn, because it's not as simple as just him going out on the field, executing plays, but what the studying habits are supposed to look like, how to prepare for a game throughout the week. You want him to develop that and learn that and create his own plan. But if you guys know Will's a machine. Will's always locked in. And so when he came in, he obviously played really well that Falcons game. But one thing I think at the time where we were in the season, we were not really grasping, but you needed something to hang your hat on, right, to get us going in the right direction. And the one thing I thought when Will came in was he gave us hope. And watching him play, and during that time, that taught me as a man, like how strong the emotion of hope is, right? And one thing that all will forever stand out in my mind is that first touchdown pass that Will threw. Jeffrey Simmons was mic'd up, and if you go back and you watch it, just watch Jeffrey's emotion and his passion.
That's Will Levis.
Yeah, and I told you, we got us a damn quarterback, and so that instilled, when your leader feels like that, it kind of permeates throughout the rest of the guys. And like I said, it just gave us hope, and it gave us hope at a time in which we needed it.
It's so rare, though, that the quarterbacks actually get the opportunity to sit and grow and develop, especially, you see cautionary tales, guys getting moved all over the place who are still on rookie deals this offseason. And for Will, how do you kind of, what's the approach in talking to him about how important every step of the process is? Are those conversations even necessary? Because he seems like a very serious individual the way that you talk about.
No, he's very serious. I think he understands it very, very well. It was pretty funny the first day, and once we had the full staff together, we had a staff meeting. So I was sitting in with the coaches as Callie was, introducing the staff to each other. And before we could even get the meeting started, Will was in the room, literally going around introducing himself to every single coach. He's in there ready to work, and that's just been his approach from the moment he's been here. And so having a guy like that that's locked in, that's ready to go, kind of sets the tone for the rest of the offense and lets them know that, like, hey, this guy's about business. And you kind of see that with, even now with Ridley being there and D-Hop and Traylon and all the guys, like when Will's taking a rep, like everyone knows, like, all right, he's not playing around.
You said something that I thought was interesting, because I know every GM in their mind has a sense of what a particular player they want. You said to be a Titan. So in your mind, as you got this opportunity now to really sort of put your stamp on what you want everything to look like, if you could explain a little bit, what does it mean to you when you say to be a Titan?
So I'll give you one word, and I'll give you the acronym that follows. My wife is in here somewhere, so you can cover the boys' ears. But one thing, and this is from Denard Wilson, our D coordinator, we want dogs, right? D.A.W.G, and the acronym for that is disciplined assholes with grit. So that's what we're looking for.
It is football, right? It is football. Yeah.
I think we need to get you in a T-shirt that says that.
Yeah. I think you do. That's exactly right. There's not a lot of defensive coaches who want nice guys, especially when they're playing the game.
But we want the same thing on offense.
Right.
We want tone setters.
Yep.
We want guys that, when they're out there was a stigma, if you will, and Brad Hopkins and I, we were in the back, we were talking about the years of battle between the Colts and the Titans back in the day, that you knew what it was going to be when you had to play the Titans.
Yeah.
And I would challenge anybody, because even myself, I want to go back and look at the win-loss records of teams after they've played a Titans team, because you get beat up,
right?
And you kind of go in, limping the next week, and so we want to instill that on in all three phases for us.
How much the offseason acquisitions that you guys have made just to start with Lloyd Cushenberry, not everybody is going to want to focus in on the center or place that much importance on that position when you guys have done so much, whether it be Sneed, Ridley, we'll talk about the draft picks here in just a second, but the value of the center position, especially for a quarterback like Will in the stage of his career that it is, how important was it for you to go out and get that guy?
Yeah, well, Lloyd was someone that we identified in terms of free agency as the best center, in the free agency class.
That's not because I texted you that I wanted the
well,
Titans
so
to sign Lloyd Cushenberry.
let me give y'all. So we had a deal with our local media where we met, and Buck was there with a couple of the other guys. And so I just went around the room. These are guys that criticize everything we do, right? Buck included. So I asked.
What are you going to do?
I said, okay, if you were calling the shots, who would be the first guy you sign? And I need some time. No, you don't have time. I don't have time. You got to make a call. And so Buck gave an answer, right? Buck gave an answer. And then later on that evening, he texted a different answer, and he was like, but this is the final answer, and it was Lloyd Cushenberry. And so, so we signed Lloyd Cushenberry just because Buck wanted us to sign.
You're welcome.
Then you're in deep trouble. Yeah.
So for future references, if we make any bad calls, this Buck was the one that texted me.
Hey, you got my phone number. You know how to get a hold of me, all right?
But Lloyd was a person that we identified as the best center in free agency, still a young guy who we feel is still ascending. But like you said, with a young quarterback and a guy that's been there, that's played the position, you put him with a young guy that Lloyd can take things off of his plate in terms of protection calls, new mics. Now, obviously, Will probably have the final say in the trump, but now he knows that when he gets to the line of scrimmage, he has a veteran guy that he can trust make those right calls.
Yeah, I think that's critically important. As you know, most coaches will allow the quarterback, if he sees something, to change it, but it's really helpful for a young guy when the center can do that, and he doesn't have to worry about that as much because there's a lot on your plate, and he's learning a new offense, so there's a lot on his plate.
Yeah, absolutely, and I just, again, I lean on experiences. My first year in scouting, we had a rookie, Matt Ryan, and his starting center was Todd McClure, who was a vet that's been there. And then when during my tenure at the Rams, we drafted Jared Goff, and then we went out and signed John Sullivan, who was a vet who had experience, in that system and that took things off of his plate. And so that's the big thing for, like you said, for those young quarterbacks is to have that trusted voice, because everyone knows no one talks in the huddle but the quarterback. But when it gets to that line of scrimmage, the quarterback has someone that they can lean on. And that's usually the center. Again, leaning on experiences, you see the relationship between Peyton Manning and Jeff Saturday, all those years. And hopefully we get to the point, I'm just smiling because I'm thinking about that big argument they had one time where Peyton told him, you stop calling the damn plays. So hopefully we get to the place with those two where we can have those type of arguments where the center is calling the plays.
Well, and I don't think people realize, it's funny, you watch a game on TV, which is what we all do, obviously, on Sundays, but you watch a game, you don't realize how little time there is from when one play ends, you have to get in the huddle, then get to the line of scrimmage, and for a young quarterback in a brand new system to take something like that off his plate is really a big deal. because he's still learning. Not only is he learning his offense, which is all brand new, so it's probably like learning a different language this year, but he's still learning what defenses in the league do. So now he does not have to worry about the protections unless he just sees something drastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like you said, from the moment the ball snapped, and like, God forbid it's an explosive.
Right.
Because now you got to get
All the way down, yep.
While your coach is calling in the play, because you get the 40-second play clock, but then the communicator shuts off at 15. So at that point, you're on your own. And you got to have that level of communication with the guys on the field to be able to adjust things afterwards.
And, you know, and a lot, as you know, a lot of college quarterbacks, when they come into the league, they struggle with that because what do they do in college? They just walk up to the line of scrimmage and they look to the sideline. And they get a play call, you know, somebody holds up something or whatever it is with a coach. Now they're in the huddle making a call. They got to walk to the line of scrimmage. All of a sudden the clock is going down. And not only do they have to really feel secure about the play they called, but now they've got to look at the defense. And there's a lot going on. Yeah.
No, and that was one of the unique things about Will when we were scouting him, and why we like Will so much is because he came from a system that was ran by guys with NFL experience.
The two guys, yeah.
And so
Liam and Rich, yeah.
So he was used to calling plays, getting it in from the sideline, calling it in the huddle. I mean, because truth be told, there are quarterbacks who make it here to our level. The way the game has evolved, you know, you have 7-on-7 all spring. They've never called a play in the huddle before.
Yeah.
You know, and so we get them at this level, and then everything is brand new. And like you said, not to mention, now you got to adjust to NFL defenses that change post-snap.
Yep.
You see one thing when the ball snapped, then it's post-snap. Then you got to be on page with your receivers. Your receivers got to read the coverage rotations and how to adjust their routes, and then you have to be on the same page with them. So it's a lot on the plate for a young
In about 2
quarterback.
seconds, that all has to happen.
Less than that.
Yeah.
So you guys add Calvin Ridley to the offense this year. So as much of the backstory on the Ridley thing as you can give, because we were all pretty surprised with how that came to fruition so quickly. And I know Titans fans are very happy to take another wide receiver that was a free agent away from the Patriots, so they enjoyed, much less the Jaguars at the same time. How much can you tell the audience about how quickly that all came together and how you guys ended up with Calvin?
So that was a less than 24-hour process.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, you know, going into free agency, we had, you know, relatively so much money, you know, to spend. And so we came up with all these crazy scenarios where we could have added everybody in free agency. Now, with that said, we wouldn't have been able to sign our draft class. But nonetheless, we could have signed a bunch of free agents. And so so Calvin was originally a part of that. And so we're doing moves because we're thinking about the totality of the team and also where the strengths and weaknesses were of the draft. And so we had a day where we were targeting 2 players who I won't name, which I hope the schedule allows us to play them this year. But we targeted 2 players, didn't get them. And so, you know, I'm pissed off and having a moment. And so I go and I shower and, you know, I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, man, I think, you know, now that we didn't make those moves, it should open it up for Ridley. And so I was like, you know, now I'm thinking about that. And so, you know, I get out of the shower, and as I get out of the shower, Chad Brinker's walking by my office, and he's like, all right, homie. And so this might be TMI, but I just put my towel on and ran out to stop him, like, hey. And so now a grown man standing there in the towel talking to another grown man. And I'm like, can we get this Ridley thing done? And Chad's like, hey, man, let's just talk in the morning. You know? And so I get dressed and I go next door to Callie's office. And now I'm like, hey, man, I think we can do this. Like, you know, where does he fit? And so now we talk about the fit. We talk about different ways he can be used, you know, in our offense. And so on my way home, I called Miss Amy. And I'm like, Miss Amy, I think we could do this. Like, what are your thoughts? And so she was like, what do you think it's going to cost us? I give her, you know, because I like to go in with our walkaway price. Like, at what point can we say, all right, we can't go beyond that? So I was like, here's what I think the walkaway price is going to be. And she was like, well, let's just talk in the morning. She's like, let's give everybody, you know, time to think about it, talk in the morning. And literally the next morning you're in, and this was before 8 a.m. The next morning, everybody was like, we're in. You know, if you want to do it, like, let's do it. And so Chad has a really good relationship with his agent. Mike went out. Oh, there we go. With his agent. And so I was like, hey, man, just put in a call, see if we have a chance, you know, because it was a process in which we knew the two teams that were in it and just didn't know that, you know, if they were just his two finalists and that were it. So we were able to get in, came strong with our offer, and it was a process in which kind of drug out, and it ended up dragging out into our favor because they a part of the deal between Jacksonville and Atlanta was if they signed him to an extension before the new league year started, the trade compensation went from a third-round pick to a second-round pick. So, you know, Jacksonville was going to wait until after 4 till the new league year started, so the compensation would be a third-round pick. Well, what played into our advantage was after 4 o'clock, then we could have a conversation with him. And so at that point, leading up to 4 o'clock, we were just throwing money, you know, at the agent, having these conversations, and trying to figure out, like, hey, what is it, you know, where can we get in? And then 4 o'clock hit, and we're all sitting around waiting because our chances are going up, they're going down. And it just dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, we haven't talked to this dude. We're just talking contract and parameters. I'm like, but none of us have talked to him. And so we got his number, and we called him up, and, you know, Coach Callahan talked to him, and then I talked to him, and it's just us having that Florida connection, that particularly the South Florida connection because he's from Broward County. And we just talked as men and just told him, like, hey, look, we're going to treat you like a man. We're going to let you be a man. We're going to let you be Calvin Ridley. You know, whoever that is, we're going to let you be that person. And I think that resonated with him.
Clearly, based on his press conference with us afterwards, he really appreciated that sentiment.
Yeah, and he just, within 2 minutes, between Coach Callahan talking to him and myself talking to him, it was 2 minutes, and he said he was in.
And, you know, I think what's so interesting about the signing, besides the fact that we can talk more about what he is as a player, you know,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to do. But, you know, obviously now you've got a 3 wide receiver situation that you probably feel really comfortable with. And obviously from where Coach Callahan came from, you know, that's something the Bengals did at maybe one of the highest percentages in the league is play with 3 wide. So that's something he's very comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you can never have enough wideouts.
Yep.
As you guys know, you know, just attrition, you know, as much as those guys have to run, you know, there are going to be some injuries somewhere along the way. And so we're always looking to continue to improve the depth there because, like you said, I mean, 11 personnel is what the NFL has played in.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
over 60% of our game is played in some form of sub packages. And so, you know, we want to be able to put weapons out there. And, I mean, shoot, even though we have, you know, wideouts to run 11, I mean, we also have 2 backs that can be, you know, problems out of the backfield. So, really excited about that and how this whole thing.
And they
is
can
gonna
both
come together.
detach, too. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
absolutely.
Yeah, not just in the backfield. So if we talk a little more about Ridley, like when you put on his tape, what do you see? Like, you know, because you hear a lot of people say some guy's a really good route runner, and Calvin Ridley is. So to you, what does that mean?
He's an elite separator.
Yeah.
I think he does a really good job of making all of his routes look the same, you know, off the ball, and he attacks it, you know, just all out full board to where whether he's running a slant, whether he's running a comeback, everything looks like a go ball, you know, and it puts the DB on his heels. So a lot of the game now, guys will play off coverage, you know, open bail, and they try to run and get out of there. And so for a guy with Calvin's speed to be able to close that cushion and get on their toes, which now forces them to open up their hips, so now it gives him a bunch of ways to go. And I think, you know, at the top of the route, there's not many guys that are better, which takes me back to last year when we were doing you know, when we were looking at D.A.W.G, and we were trying to get that done. And it's funny how these things come together because last year, and along with a bunch of other guys, but D.A.W.G, Debo Samuels, and Calvin Ridley all trained together in Arizona. And I remember Debo reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna get D.A.W.G for you." and so we were.
He's still taking credit?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. But one of the things, we were talking. I was like, "How's he looking?" In training. He was like, "Hey man, D-Hop still has it," and he was like, "But man, this Ridley dude is." He was like, "We're all stealing stuff out of his bag, to try to add to our game," and so that always played in my mind. And then when you play him twice a year, and you see him and you see the way he moves, you see the way he runs routes, and for us to be able to get him, I think it's going to only make us better.
Yeah, he's so smooth. It just looks easy. But you're right. He's such a good separator. He gets guys turned. He gets off coverage corners. I forget which coach told me this. You're trying to do one of two things. You're trying to get them off their spot, or you're trying to get their body turned. And then once either one of those things happen, then you win.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I meant about being able to press them with speed and to get on their toes. Because, when they're playing off, right, they're playing to not get beat deep, right? So they're playing everything from the top down. And so once you get on them quick, now they're forced to – it kind of sets a little panic in because now it's like, okay, is he taking me up top? Is he going to snap down? Is he going to break in? Is he going to break out? So it opens up that whole thing for him. And the quicker you can get on their toes and force them to open up their hips, the better you are as a separator.
And he's got enough speed to run away from man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was the one thing from during this phase 1 and now in the phase 2 of the offseason program is when you see him for the first time in person, up as close as we can get now, you notice the speed really jumps off.
Yeah.
You guys acquired L'Jarius Sneed via trade from the Kansas City Chiefs. That sounded like a much more drawn-out process than the Ridley acquisition was.
Yes and no. I think it was just because of the way the technology age and the information age that we're in, like things get out quicker. It was one of those things where at the time, you were like, okay, he's going to be a free agent, at the top of the new league year. So you're exploring, all of that. And as soon as they put the franchise tag on him, you're like, all right, well, there's still a chance you can get him, but you have to see what Kansas City's going to do. And so when they didn't sign Chris Jones, you had to think they're not just going to let Chris Jones walk. And so understanding where they were from a cap perspective, it was like, okay, there's a bunch of things that have to happen for them to make both of those guys fit. And then once they got the deal done with Chris Jones, we knew that there was a chance for us to get LJ done. And so we were just kind of playing it light, just kind of reading the tea leaves, if you will. And so from the time we made like a real offer to them, then it went pretty quick. But at that point, it was just more exploratory. When you mentioned tone setters, he's definitely one that comes to mind. How important was that attitude, that approach, that aggressiveness, and that ability to play press? No, it's huge, especially for our defense, and what D.A.W.G wants to do. He wants to challenge guys, at the line of scrimmage, which is also another reason why, we went after Cheetah Bay-Awuzie, to get two guys in here that are going to, match that. And that's how Roger plays, in the nickel. Roger is a small linebacker, first and second down in the nickel that can play the C-gap and fit in there, stick his face in there in the run. But then he can challenge guys, on third down. And so adding someone like, LJ to the mix is what's going to help drive this defense and help it go.
Without question. The thing that's so interesting to me about this now, we talked about this before you came on, is that the league with all the quick game passing now is corners who can press have become more important than ever because you can't really impact the quarterback on a lot of normal down and distance situations because the ball gets out so fast. So you got to impact receivers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that disrupts them, like you said, at the line of scrimmage, which then forces the quarterback to hold it a half a second longer, a second longer.
Yep.
And it gives your rush another step, to get there. And it's going to be cool to see both of those units tied together, the coverage and the rush. And I think they're both going to benefit from each other.
I got a question because you started out as a scout, right? So you have
still a scout.
Well, yeah, right. Well, so you have someone like L'Jarius Sneed. So wouldn't you say, obviously, we both agree that he's a really good player. It doesn't matter whether we think he's a top 3, top 5, whatever. He's a really good corner. He was a 4th-round pick out of Louisiana Tech. So if you're a scout, because this is what I do, as you know. I mean, I grind through all these guys and do it every year. So why is someone like Sneed a 4th-round pick, and then this is what he becomes? I'm always fascinated by that whole process.
So the draft is a lot about scheme fit, right? And prior to him going, when he was coming out those years ago, what has it been, 5 years
Something
now?
like that, yeah.
The game and the way we play coverage has just changed, right? Because a few years ago, it was, illegal contact was a real thing, particularly downfield. They were calling it a lot. So you needed, more guys to play off. And then they had that nice run Seattle did. And then a lot of teams started adopting that Seattle defense to play in the cover 3, playing off. And then, again, it's how cyclical it all is. It changed. But
teams beat cover 3 now. They know how to do it.
Right. So because you have so much, so much exposure to the cover 3, now you find all your cover 3 beaters, and you got your, your way to work it. So now teams are like, you know what, we're going to play more man, and we're going to get in these teams' faces, and we're going to challenge them. And so guys slip, but the NFL has a nice way of correcting itself, and it always does. And players like that, rise to the top.
And you just put a new draft class in place. As a matter of fact, you're about, 6 days removed from the draft?
Yeah.
I know the feeling.